I'm gonna show you guys why Geron don't do interviews. Just like in my video, I told you. If you ain't seen it, go look it up. Go watch it. But I'm finna give you the key example. I told you they don't want him to do interviews because they don't want him to talk too much, because if he run his mouth, he's gonna end up putting his foot in his mouth and he's gonna end up exposing himself. That's why Boots has always done limited interviews, and that's counterproductive to his brand making and making him a superstar. How can you become a superstar when they're too scared to put you in front of cameras and get you in interviews because they too scared of what you might say, because you're going to reveal something about the plan that goes against what Eddie Hearn's been telling the rest of the world. So we finna go into that right now, and we're going to see why they don't want Geron talking.
Said, and I want to get your take on it now, that, hey, we're going to do this fight a couple weeks ago, the one that you won. You're going to do your fight, and if everything goes well, these two guys are going to fight each other in 2026. That's the agreement. What Eddie said was they went back to you, you signed. You said you were in.
I signed like that.
In. No problems, no questions, nothing.
Nope.
They went back to Virgil. This is what he said. And they were like, we're going to do our fight, and then we're going to revisit this. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. You know, that's understandable though. You know, you gotta stay on task of what's in front of you. You know, and not overlooking nobody.
But you agreed before your fight.
Yeah, I did, but
Yeah.
I still was locked in on Lima. You know, even when people was asking me about the Ortiz situation, I wouldn't even say nothing about it. I'll be like, October 11th, we focusing on Lima, and that's it. You know, that's our main focus right now. I said, after I'm victorious, he said, and I was like, then we could talk about these other guys.
I hope you heard that loud and clear. Okay, what he just Geron, not anybody else, not no speculation, not nothing. Okay, now we didn't already knock down the background, right? We didn't already prove that he didn't duck that fight, right? Now we're gonna prove that he ducked Brian Norman Jr. Because when Brian Norman Jr. said the exact thing that Virgil Ortiz said, they called him a duck. They said, we're moving on and we're not waiting for you. Here it is. They so-called got a contract that they have signed, waiting for Virgil Ortiz to do his thing, and then they can come back to it. Guess what? That's the same thing Brian Norman Sr. and Brian Norman Jr. said to Eddie and Jaron Boots Ennis and his team. And they said they called that ducking. So let me ask you a question. If it was called ducking when Brian Norman Jr. did it, shouldn't it be called ducking when Virgil Ortiz is doing it, the same fight that they're promising you? And to add on top of that, Geron ended up saying the same thing that even Brian Norman Jr. said.
About the Ortiz situation, I wouldn't even say nothing about it. I'll be like, October 11th, we focusing on Lima, and that's it. You know, that's our main focus right now. I said, after I'm victorious, he said, and I was like, then we could talk about these other guys.
So even Geron agreed that you need to focus on the task at hand, and we need to deal with the fight or whatever we're gonna do with the fight after hand. But let's focus on the goal, and then we could talk about things. Now Geron is saying the same thing that Brian Norman Jr. said to him, in which his team and the rest of the Jaron Boots and his fan base called him a duck. Now let me see you wiggle out of this paper bag, okay? So we know that he has ducked Crawford for a fact, okay? We know that he has ducked Bakaram for a fact. Now, out of Jaron Boots in his own mouth, you can hear that he ducked Brian Norman Jr. for a fact. This is why they don't want him to do interviews, especially with somebody like me around. With my mind, I'm going to catch your ass. And he totally exposed there was nothing wrong with what Brian Norman Jr. said. He had the right frame of mind. That's why I said I agree with Brian Norman Jr. and it makes sense. I said if he has a good performance against Jen Sasaki, that's going to increase his power at the negotiation tables. I understand the math behind that. Y'all act like you didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. Well, there Geron is once again exposing himself. So we don't need to question Brian Norman Jr. This, that. He ducked Brian Norman Jr. too, but it's not like you didn't know. Like, comment, subscribe. Bruce Vane, I'm out.
I can't wait. You know, they're gonna see. I ain't even gonna say too much. They're gonna see.
Is it personal between you two?
No, it's not personal, but it's just I see all the little talking that they've been doing.